Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us is Dr. Jennea Wood, naturopathic doctor at the Lacey location of Tummy Temple. And we have Heidi Ochsner. She's a registered dietitian and you do the products as well. And also herbalist at the Seattle location of Tummy Temple. So thank you so much for all being here, and y'all are in for a treat of a fabulous presentation on gut health.
Mhm.
Take it away, ladies.
All right.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, I'll just introduce myself and then I think Heidi's gonna start us off and introduce herself. I see a question, where is Elizabeth's market based? And it's based out of, I think there's two locations in Tacoma and Gig Harbor.
Federal Way.
Oh, Federal Way. I'm sorry. My bad. So I'm Dr. Jennea Wood. I'm a naturopathic physician specializing in all things gut health, autoimmune disease, eczema, mold illness. I am based out of our Lacey location of Tummy Temple, but I do see people virtually. And this is a topic near and dear to our hearts at Tummy Temple. The gut, as you probably are aware, is central to all aspects of health. If we can't digest foods and assimilate them and take in the nutrients to help build our bodies and repair ourselves, then we can end up with some uncomfortable problems on our hands. So I'm excited to get started. Thank you so much for being here and taking your time out of your evening. And thank you so much to Marlene's Market for hosting these classes. We appreciate you and all of the wonderful healthy foods and products and everything that you carry. So thank you for everything you do. And I'll pass it along to Heidi.
Hi, I'm Heidi Ochsner. I'm the registered dietitian at Tummy Temple. I'm in the Seattle location. So I also do a few other things there. I'm the product manager and do some colon hydrotherapy and lymphatic therapy. And yes, I agree with Dr. Wood. Gut health is one of our very favorite topics and really affects everything. And that's what it's so important to talk about and why it's so helpful, because a lot of times when we see clients, they might tell us about this issue that they're having or this symptom. And a lot of times it comes down to the gut, or the gut is a piece of what will help with their healing. And so with that said, why don't we just get started? Oh, and yes, again, thank you, Marlene's. We love having this platform and introducing us to new people and allowing us to get this information out there. So, okay, let's see. We're going to start off. So as we were just saying, the gut is the foundation of whole body health. I mean, it's really, really key. And it plays a huge role, not in just, it's not just, oh, I eat and then I don't feel good, or I'm having some digestive problems, so there must be an issue with my gut. If you have dysregulation in your digestive system, that plays a huge role in how you feel throughout your whole life. So the gut is very important in immune system regulation. And so that's going to affect everything. If the microbiome, which is the bacteria and the different microbes that live in your gut, if they're out of balance, if you're deficient in the good bacteria, or if your gut is just not functioning optimally, then your health is going to be at risk in one way or another. You could have more inflammation. You could have a lot of different problems. So sometimes people ask, like, okay, well, who needs gut rebuilding? Like, when do you need gut rebuilding? How do you know if you need gut rebuilding? If you have some sort of GI issues, then that could be an indication that you might need gut rebuilding. As well, though, it could be non-GI issues, and that's when things get a little confusing for people. It could be headaches or fatigue, skin issues like eczema, brain fog, mood disorders. You may have heard mood and food. There's more serotonin made in your gut than in your brain. And so if your digestion is off, that can affect your mood. Autoimmune conditions are definitely affected by gut disorders. These issues can either be caused by gut disorders or can contribute to or exacerbated by leaky gut. Heart disease actually can be part of it, allergies, asthma. And then, there's just sort of the joke that we all tell around work that who needs gut rebuilding? We're like humans living in the modern world, all need gut rebuilding because what we experience, what we are exposed to even 100 years ago, people were not. In 1924, my grandmother was not being exposed to the things that I'm being exposed to now. So modern world plays a role in the fact that more people are needing to work on gut health.
Absolutely. And, we know that people, even people who do not have any digestive symptoms at all, but who have one or more of those other health concerns that Heidi just listed, may still have leaky gut because there's actually testing that shows that, including zonulin is a marker that can be tested that indicates leaky gut. And sometimes people will have really high levels of zonulin, indicating really leaky intestinal barrier with no digestive symptoms, but with heart disease or with some other kind of inflammatory condition. So I'm going to go a little bit into the details of what's going on here. So the lining of our intestines, and we're primarily talking about the small intestine here, which is about 9 feet of intestines connecting the stomach to the colon, also known as large intestine. And so the inner lining of that whole tube is just this thin single layer of cells called an epithelium. And those cells are held together in a continuous sheet by things called tight junctions. So all of the cells are tightly held together by these junctions, and it forms a semi-permeable membrane. And so that means mostly, things are not allowed through except in a very controlled fashion. So as we digest our foods, what's supposed to happen is we break them down using all of our chewing, our digestive enzymes, our stomach acid, our whole process to break it down into these individual component parts, such as amino acids. So proteins break down into these building blocks, amino acids. Carbohydrates break down into individual glucose molecules. And then this membrane has these very specific little pathways for those things to pass through in a very controlled manner. It's all very orderly, or at least it's supposed to be. And that can start to break down when there's inflammation and irritation of that gut lining. And then bigger chunks of protein are allowed to leak through that membrane, or actually little bits of bacteria or even whole bacteria are allowed to leak through when normally those would be kept strictly in the gut tube, not allowed to come through into our bloodstream and our body. And so when those things begin to be allowed to leak through because of intestinal permeability or leaky gut, that upsets our immune system. Our immune systems, our white blood cells are not happy about finding unexpected things in the bloodstream, and it is actually sort of interpreted as if there were a blood infection. It's not really truly a blood infection. Generally speaking, it's like bits of bacteria, things like that, but still it's things that shouldn't be there. Our immune system is very unhappy about this and produces inflammation in response. And that low level of inflammation causes or is one of the root causes behind basically every chronic health condition you can imagine. It's one of the root causes.
That's actually a question that someone had a minute ago, which was, are gut disorders all caused by leaky gut?
Are gut disorders all caused by
All
leaky gut?
caused by leaky gut.
I wouldn't say that, but I would say most all gut disorders result in some leaky gut, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so then what do we do about it? So we kind of break this down or use a paradigm called the 4R program to promote gut health. And this is a strategy that has been in use for many, many years by naturopathic doctors. The term, which is a super handy term, was coined by Jeffrey Bland, who's a function of the Functional Medicine Institute. But the general process has been a tried and true technique used by naturopathic doctors for a very long time. So the 4Rs stand for remove, replace, rebalance, and regenerate. And actually, I think we've changed a couple of those to suit the way that we see gut healing. But I'm going to go a little bit more in detail into that first step, remove. So what are we removing? We are removing the causes of leaky gut. Before you can really make very good progress, we need to identify the root cause and hopefully, remove causes of disease. So that's what we're doing here. So let's see, I'm just seeing if there are further questions. So things that we might want to remove would include gut infections. So that can include, pathogenic or disease-causing bacteria, viruses, parasites, or funguses, such as Candida. A common bacterial issue would be small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, as an example. And there are functional tests, gut tests that can be used to identify the presence of these things. So we can test for gut infections via stool tests or breath testing. And those are things that you would want to see myself or one of our other naturopathic doctors to have that testing done. And that really helps to target treatment. Other things we might want to remove would be environmental contaminants that are irritating or inflaming to the gut lining. And this is where we've got our work cut out for us, because we all get exposed to a lot of junk that our great-grandmother didn't get exposed to. So things like chlorine in the water or fluoride in the water. And those things the chlorine is added to remove bacteria that could be harmful from the water, to kill the bacteria. And so, that's important. We don't want to get diseases from our water, but then the chlorine itself can cause problems. So we want to filter that out. Antibiotics, especially overuse of antibiotics, or antibiotics get added to animal feed. So we can be exposed to that through non-organic meats, things like that. Over-the-counter medications like NSAID medications, for example, ibuprofen, aspirin, Midol, etc., cause a lot of leaky gut. They are very irritating and inflaming themselves to the stomach lining and the intestinal lining, and then other things like acid blockers, like proton pump inhibitors, and antihistamines are also irritating. Heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides, mold. It's a long list. Plastic chemicals. So I talk to a lot of my patients about how can we remove or reduce plastic exposure in daily life, because all those plastic chemicals can leach into food and into our water and really cause a lot of problems. I know this can be sort of an overwhelming topic, and I look at it as sort of a step-by-step process. So you don't have to do all of this at once. It's just like, as possible, addressing one thing at a time. So, this week or this month might be if you drink water out of plastic water bottle, switching to a stainless steel water bottle. next month or down the road, when possible, it might be investing in a better water purifier or a water purifier. So I'm going to send out a follow-up email in the next couple days after this class. It's the only email you'll receive from us unless you choose to sign up for our newsletter. And I'll include a handout that talks about my top 6 favorite ways to reduce exposure to environmental chemicals, and that'll go through some of these things in further detail. A couple other things to keep in mind would be artificially scented products like perfumes, scented candles, and plugins. Those are quite irritating and bothersome. And I think that mostly covered it. Oral contraceptives, which, there's no perfect form of birth control. Sometimes that's the right choice, depending on the person, but they can cause some bothersome effects to the gut. So.
As well, part of this remove part of the 4 R's that we're talking about, it could be removing certain foods from your diet. And when I see people for nutrition, I always want to talk about what you can eat. And sometimes we also have to talk about things that are going to be more problematic. And those would include inflammatory foods, right? The more inflammation, the more likely you're to get this leaky gut where the gut becomes more permeable. So inflammatory foods are often very processed foods that have artificial colorings or flavorings or different kinds of artificial chemicals that are there for just keeping it on the shelf for a really long time. I once read or heard someone say, like, if it doesn't go bad, it's bad for you. I thought that was a great comment. Or if you read the ingredients and you're like, I literally have no idea what this is and I couldn't make this in my kitchen, it's probably, pretty processed. You also might consider removing foods that individually you are sensitive to, or that for you, they are individually more likely to be inflaming. And so people are like, how do I figure that out? Well, there are multiple ways you could do that. You can do an elimination diet. It's often called a elimination and challenge diet, where you eliminate common foods that people are sensitive to, things like gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs, and then you challenge those foods one at a time to see if you get some kind of reaction or response. And we walk people through those kinds of elimination diets all the time. As well, you can get a blood test kit for food intolerances, where it's a finger prick, and you can look at the different immunoglobulins and how your body responds to certain foods. So we usually use US Biotech for that, but there are a number of different companies that do those food intolerance tests. So usually you're going to want to meet with someone on our ND team or myself if you're going to want to walk through that, just to make sure that you're spending the time doing it correctly. And then usually you would want to retest in 6 months or a year after you've eliminated and done some of this gut rebuilding that we're going to talk more about in the rest of this hour. Other things that you might be taking out during the remove part would be, as I said, food additives, toxins. If you can go organic, then that's great. Even if you only look at things like the Dirty Dozen and remove those, these are the 12 most sprayed fruits and vegetables that the EWG Environmental Working Group, I did it. They put out every year a Dirty Dozen and a Clean 15. So they're like, these are the dozen most covered in sprayed vegetables and fruits, whether it be herbicides or pesticides. I mean, you'd be shocked. Some things are like, they found 67 residues of herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides on grapes or whatever. And then they tell you about the Clean 15, right? Watermelons don't have that many. And each year they're a little bit different. They do the testing every year. So if you can't go entirely organic, if that isn't going to work for your lifestyle or for your pocketbook, at least looking at some of the most common ones and trying to remove those from your diet food additives, like we were saying, really, no one's like, alcohol is so good for me. For everyone, alcohol is going to be a little more inflaming as well. Gluten can increase zonulin, which is the protein in charge of the tight junctions. So that's actually the test that Dr. Wood was talking about earlier that you can look at to see if you have leaky gut. Sugar overconsumption can also be more inflammatory. Many of these things also feed the quote bad guys, which are the microbes in the gut that you don't want that many of. So the standard American diet has low variety and it relies heavily on gluten and dairy and soy and corn and eggs, sugar and alcohol. So instead of that, you can focus on whole foods, lots of plants, lots of herbs and spices, lots of different colors on your plate, whole grains, nuts and seeds, grass-fed meats or wild-caught fish. You can think a bit of what you want to focus on, and that will naturally help cut out some of the things you want to avoid. And then when we're thinking about, removing things, you can also think about removing stress if you can. Acute and chronic stress are going to impact your life. Stress hormones are going to actively damage the intestinal lining and reduce the production of digestive juices. So our food doesn't break down as well. So, a lot of times people are like, oh, I deal great with stress. I'm really good at handling stress, but sometimes we need to take an honest look at like how we feel versus what society, often Western culture very specifically, sort of puts you on a pedestal if you can handle a lot of stress. But people have been living a certain way for thousands of years, and in the last 100 years, the amount of stress can be really increased in how rapidly things come at us. So just taking a look at your life and trying to decrease stress while you can. And we'll talk more about de-stressing strategies later on.
We've got a accumulation of questions, so I'm going to pause to answer some of those. So let's see, the question should have been, is leaky gut causing autoimmune disease? And I would say a resounding yes. I would say, probably 100% of people with an autoimmune disease have leaky gut. It's one of the cornerstones of the inflammation that underlies, I would say, pretty much all autoimmune diseases. So yes to that. Vaccines, question mark, asking if that can cause leaky gut. And I would say possibly / probably, depending on the vaccine, possibly temporary. So, it's sort of an individual discussion and individual, thing to consider there. And then, question or a concern about stainless water bottles that may be all made in China. And in that case, I hear you. And a lot of this is just looking at it as there's no perfection. And how can we, have less exposure? So the plastic water bottles are probably also made in China, and they leach a lot more than stainless steel will. And so how can we just move the needle toward better and less exposure, and then try not to worry too much, because otherwise we'll just be worried 100% of the time because there just is no perfection.
Which increases stress hormone and makes your gut or leaky. So there is a balance. And you can drink out of glass too, if that is, if you.
Yeah. Glass is another option. And then, yes, we will absolutely, someone is asking, can we recommend foods that help build a healthy gut? And we will talk in a lot of detail about that coming up, so bear with us. And question about, will this webinar be transcribed? And I don't think we have a way to do that, unfortunately. We will send out some handouts, and it will be recorded. And so you are welcome to, it'll be easy to flip around and should be pretty quick to find a spot if there was a particular thing that you were wanting to reference. And then what if you're having trouble digesting whole foods? We will be getting to that very shortly as well. And is salmon safe to eat? And I would say I would always recommend wild-caught salmon. I think farmed salmon is very riddled with chemicals and it's fed very unnatural foods. And our wild salmon is somewhat depleted and also, you know, there's pollution in the water. And so I would say that kind of needs to be balanced, and salmon's a very healthy food, generally speaking, but can we incorporate some of that, but not rely on it too heavily? Let's see. Oh, someone is offering to transcribe the recording and make it available. Well, sure, that'd be lovely. And you're very welcome for hosting this. Okay, moving on to the next R, which is replace. So we have removed the irritating things. Now we are replacing digestive fire. So we're supporting better digestion. And our what we call digestive fire is the metabolic processes and the juices that our bodies make to actually do the digesting of food. And so we can support that by helping stimulate our body to produce more digestive juices. And then we can actually add in some more in supplement form if needed. So how this normally works is there's a cascade of signals that actually starts with the brain with just thinking about food. And then the flavors of the food, especially sour and bitter flavors, interact with sour and bitter taste receptors in our mouth and also send signals to produce more digestive juices. These juices are our first line of defense to protect against gut infections. And they are absolutely needed to break the food down enough that we can absorb it. And they're also very needed to extract and absorb the minerals and vitamins that we're getting out of the food. So those micronutrients, so not just the protein and carbohydrates, but the iron and the the magnesium and the B vitamins and all of that. We think about it as you're not just, it's not just you are what you eat, but you are what you absorb. And so if you're having a hard time absorbing the foods that you eat, even if you're eating really healthy foods, then there's still going to be some issues there. So we often have less stomach acid with age. It tends to just decline somewhat with age. It will certainly reduce, or we'll make less of it with stress. We will make less of it if we have H. pylori, which is a bacteria that lives in the stomach. It's a very common bacteria. There's a lot of controversy around it, and not enough time to get into that here. It doesn't necessarily need to be killed off, but in some people it causes a lot of problems, and it certainly can reduce stomach acid. And if we have a candida, which is a yeast overgrowing in the gut, we can have lower stomach acid. If we take antacids, such as Tums, or proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, those will, purposefully decrease our stomach acid, which will then make it harder to digest and absorb our foods. And then hypochlorhydria, which is the medical term for low stomach acid, is also associated with many diseases such as asthma, celiac disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is one of our most common cause of low thyroid function, hepatitis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, and diabetes. And so there's a major association of low stomach acid with a lot of chronic illnesses. Signs of low stomach acid include a sense of fullness after eating. or a feeling like food just kind of sits in the stomach for too long, especially protein-rich foods, and most especially red meat. So if you eat a burger or a steak and it feels like it just sits for a long time, feels heavy, that is a pretty classic sign of low stomach acid. Also, excess bloating, belching, indigestion, heartburn, having multiple food allergies, undigested food in the stool, and peeling and cracking fingernails can additionally be signs of low stomach acid. And interestingly, and probably frustratingly, people are often put on a proton pump inhibitor or acid blocking medication for heartburn, but very commonly, heartburn is associated with low stomach acid, occasionally with high stomach acid, but in the majority of people, it's actually too little stomach acid. And so then the medication suppresses the symptoms, but worsens the problem. We do have a class that we teach periodically on heartburn and go into much greater detail about that. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in learning more.
So there's a couple of questions. Can you repeat how to increase stomach acid? We're talking about actually supplementing, and we'll get into that. And it's coming, I promise. And then someone asked, is smoothie a good gut digestion method? What I'd say about that is if you blend everything, you are increasing your mechanical digestion, right? When you chew, that's mechanical digestion. You're creating more surface area when you blend something up. But then you still need the chemical digestion of the digestive juices to get in there. So turning something into a smoothie is helpful if you are not chewing or having trouble chewing. And if you don't have as many digestive juices for that chemical digestion, at least you've created more surface area, but you're still going to need to address the digestive juices and the chemical digestion piece. Smoothie is going to address the mechanical digestion piece.
Yeah, and if you took those same fruits and you chewed them up, you would be kind of doing the breaking them up part, but then also the saliva in your mouth has a whole bunch of amylase, which is an enzyme in it that starts the digestive process. And so sometimes people will get sort of bloated after smoothies, and part of it is because they're missing that part. You can swallow it so quickly, you don't have a chance for your body to add in the amylase to start digesting the carbohydrates in that smoothie.
So how can we help with all this digestion and the digestive juices? One of the first things you can do is eat in a relaxed environment, because as we were talking about earlier, stress levels actually really affect your digestive juices. If you're in fight or flight, your body's like, run, fight a bear. I don't care about digesting. We're going to die. But the opposite of that is rest and digest. So eating in a relaxed environment where you're sitting down, where you're not multitasking, you're not eating and driving or eating and watching television, you're really present and calm is going to be helpful. Chewing, like we were just saying, mechanical digestion is really helpful. You can also, your mother was right, you can also add in things that will help stimulate digestive juices or are digestifs. For example, things like pineapple and papaya contain bromelain that can help with digestion. Peppermint and ginger, these are classics for digestive juices and fire. This is why you get a peppermint at the end of your meal. It's not just for your breath. Or ginger will often be helped to stoke digestive juices. Fermented things are actually helpful for digestion. When things are fermented, they're almost like pre-digested by the bacteria that are fermenting them, and it can just help ease digestion along. Bitter foods are also stimulating of digestive juices. This is why often you'll have a bitter green salad at the end of the meal or at the beginning of a meal, depending on which continent you're on. But a bitter greens anything bitter really can help stimulate digestive juices. Sometimes, people are like, oh, I had an upset stomach, and someone said, oh, here, have a bitters and soda water. Those bitters help stimulate digestive juices to help break down whatever you're eating. Raw apple cider vinegar can also be helpful. Some people will take a spoonful of raw apple cider vinegar with their meals, or after a meal if they feel like they've overeaten or they feel bloated and like things aren't digesting. We also have a bitters called Temple Bitters that is a tincture of Mayan herbs. And I love them because not only do they have the bitter aspect that we were just talking about that helps stimulate digestive juices, but they also have an herb in there called manvine that is a nervine. So that means it brings you out of fight or flight and into that rest and digest nervous system state. So it helps not only stimulate digestive juices, but bring you into that right nervous system state where you're more calm and relaxed and your body can do the digesting on its own. So those are ways, go ahead.
I just posted the
Oh.
product collection. So, we were mentioning a couple particular things. So I shared a link where you can check those out if you're curious.
Thanks, Dr. Wood. And then, so those are ways that you can help with digestive juices, but you can also actually like help, produce your own, but you can also actually supplement with the actual juices that you need, the actual chemicals. So for example, betaine HCl, we were just talking about, that's hydrochloric acid that your stomach produces for breaking down proteins. And as well, you need zinc to create hydrochloric acid. But if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, then you can't absorb your minerals. So for example, zinc. So it can become this sort of downward spiral where you're like, who knows why it started, but say you were really stressed and you didn't make enough hydrochloric acid for a while, and then you're eating, but you're not absorbing any zinc. So then you're not stressed anymore, but now you're low on zinc. So you don't have enough zinc to make hydrochloric acid. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's great to also get in zinc when you're supplementing with hydrochloric acid. And so you can do that through eating things that are high in zinc, like oysters, beef, lamb, crab, dark chicken or dark turkey meat. Pumpkin seeds are high in zinc, garlic, sesame seeds, chickpeas, or you can supplement with zinc. So that's one, betaine, HCl, hydrochloric acid, and then making sure you have the minerals to produce that. Enzymes as well, so we have a great blend called Digest Ease V. That's a vegetarian enzyme blend that really helps break down cell walls and gives you all the different enzymes. So there's enzymes for proteins, proteases, there's enzymes for fats, lipases, there's enzymes for carbohydrates. And so all those different enzymes can be really helpful for people. And then hydrochloric acid is sort of that separate stomach acid, right? Then you also can even supplement with something called bile. Bile actually helps you emulsify fat so the digestive enzymes can get in there and digest them, because enzymes are water soluble, fat is fat soluble, so those things don't mix very well. So the bile can actually help emulsify the fat, so all those water soluble enzymes can get in there and break that fat down. So it helps with fat digestion, but it also stimulates the movement of the GI tract. So the one that we often use is called beta plus, and that's really great, especially if someone's digestion tends to be slow. And then you can get combos of all these digestive juices all put together. So you can get something that has hydrochloric acid, enzymes, and bile all in one. And the one we often use that we love is called Temple Total Digest, because it's all of it together. So depending on what you need, there are lots of different options. And sometimes you can immediately say, oh, that's what I need. And sometimes you might want to talk to one of our naturopathic doctors to get a little bit more information about what would work for you.
And then just a note of caution, if you try out taking betaine hydrochloride, if it causes kind of a burning sensation or pain or increased heartburn in the kind of solar plexus, like upper gut area, you should stop taking it and, talk to your doctor or talk to myself or one of our naturopathic doctors. That tends to be a sign of gastritis, which is inflammation of the lining of the stomach. The stomach is, it's built to hold very, very acidic contents, like pH of 2, which is incredibly acidic, because it has this thick mucus lining that protects the surface of the actual like epithelium or the tissue in there. But that mucus lining can actually get broken down over time, and then the lining of the stomach can be inflamed, in which case you can at least temporarily lose the ability to really tolerate that super acidic stomach contents. In that case, a lot of times your body sort of like turns down the stomach acid production on purpose to protect you. And so then if you happen to then, see this talk and say, I'm going to try taking stomach acid, and your body can't handle it, that will usually present as pain or burning, in that stomach area. Usually we can get you to the point where you can tolerate it again, and that will help your digestion in the long run. But in the short term, don't take it. It's going to make things worse. So that's something to be aware of. Couple other questions. Someone's asking to spell the herb. I think you're referring to manvine. Was that what you were saying earlier, Heidi? I think you were talking about
Yes.
manvine.
It's a Mayan herb. It's not super, it's not it's a Mayan herb. So sort of the Belize, Mayan Peninsula of Mexico region.
We do have it just as our nerve tonic though, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you could look that up. I think it's just spelled M-A-N, man, vine, right?
Exactly.
I think that's right. So V-I-N-E, like a growing a vine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in our Temple Bitters, and then we have a separate product called Nerve Tonic that's just man vine. It's a really lovely calming herb, and has kind of like a nice flowery flavor to it as well. Curious about doTERRA oils and supplements. I am not a fan of taking essential oils internally. I have seen many people actually cause gastritis by doing that. Essential oils are really powerful medicine, and they're too strong for the stomach lining. And it's too concentrated. So I don't think that's a good idea. I know doTERRA is wild about that. I advise against it. Let's see. What vitamin supplements will help with gut health? Please share in the chat.
I put our link with all of the products.
Yeah, so reference the link there. I don't think we're going to be able to share all of them in the chat because they're all kind of interspersed throughout the talk. And then what are healthy versus unhealthy enzymes?
I'm not, yeah, I wasn't.
I am not sure how to answer that. I think,
enzymes are in general healthy, and
enzymes are in general healthy.
Yeah.
Let's see. And yes, this presentation will be available to see again. It will be free and recorded and available. We'll send a link out with the follow-up email that I'll send out in a couple days. And then it'll also be posted on the Marlene's YouTube channel. And let's see, share thoughts on DGL. We will also get to that. Okay, so we are at the final R, I believe, which is rebalance. So that is kind of getting into rebalancing the microbiome after the rest of the gut healing has been addressed. This has been talked about for many, many years as re-inoculating, like we're taking probiotics and that is repopulating the gut with healthy gut bacteria. That, research has actually now basically ruled that out as something that happens. That's not really how it works. So we get our microbiomes from our moms, who get them from their moms, who get them from their moms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can't actually just take a probiotic supplement and re-inoculate everything and start over. What we can do is use all sorts of things, including probiotic supplements, to kind of nudge and rebalance and support our microbiome. So I am a fan of probiotics. They are very, very helpful. but they don't work in the way that we were told for many years that they work. They largely we're getting the bacteria, but we're also getting these really beneficial compounds that the probiotic bacteria have made that are in the capsule with the probiotic. And those are exerting, they're sort of helping bolster the growth of our innate gut bacteria that have been with us, throughout our life, or that we've picked up along the way. So that's, very, very helpful, but not gonna just like replace and give us a new microbiome. So probiotics help us break down foods that we can't. So actually, what's left over after we digest and absorb the things that we can digest and absorb is fiber, which we can't really do much with. So we're relying on the gut bacteria to ferment that. And what happens when they ferment that is they produce all these really helpful byproducts, including butyrate, which is basically food for our colon cells, and also an incredibly healing substance that nourishes and supports our mitochondrial health. So if we have a healthy microbiome that makes enough butyrate, it will leak out into the rest of our body and support our mitochondria, which are our little energy powerhouses all over our body. Probiotics, or those breakdown products from the probiotic fermentation of our fiber decrease inflammation. They're anti-cancer, really, really helpful. Probiotics can help kind of nudge out bad bacteria, or the less helpful bacteria. They can communicate with and calm down our immune system. They can help us make vitamin K and B vitamins. As I mentioned, they help us digest fiber. They break down toxins. They improve the pH, the acidity in our gut, which helps with mineral absorption. They help us make neurotransmitters. And then different probiotics help with different things. So we're at the point in, the science and understanding of probiotics that now it's not really like just take a probiotic. It's like, what are you taking it for? So there are probiotics that are better for lowering blood sugar, for diabetes. There are ones that are better for helping prevent respiratory illness through the winter. There are other ones that are better for decreasing allergies, some that are better for improving mood. So this is another thing that we get into in, in our individual consultations. We have a database that we reference. So when we're choosing a probiotic, there are some that are kind of good all around options that do some of column A, some of column B, but then, we will reference this database and look up, okay, so these are the health conditions you have. This is what the research says is the best probiotic for you. So that's something that we can get detailed about in individual visits.
So how can we help rebalance? We want to rebalance these good bacteria. What can we do? So everyone's heard of probiotics, and probably a lot of you have also heard of prebiotics. So prebiotics are food for probiotics. So that is, for example, fiber. Dr. Wood just said fiber, there's not much we can do with it, but our probiotics love it. It's their food. So fiber, like found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, all of these feed the good bacteria and help them create those postbiotics like the butyrate that Dr. Wood was talking about, that had all the wonderful effects like the anti-cancerous effects and all these great things. So complex branch sugars, for example, inulin, is also another form of prebiotic, often found in things like Jerusalem artichokes, mushrooms, okra, jicama, bamboo shoots. water chestnuts, burdock root, daikon radish. There's all these different foods that you can eat that have this specific inulin, that is this specific food for the probiotics. So there's lots of ways to feed the good bacteria. You can also eat fermented foods that themselves have probiotics in them. People ate a lot more fermented foods in the past when we didn't have refrigeration as widely available, because when you fermented something, it kept it shelf stable. It kept you were able to keep this food longer. So things that are fermented, for example, plain kefir or yogurt, they're non-dairy options too. There's coconut yogurts. There's a million different yogurts out there. When it does come to things like kefir and yogurt, I always have people watch the sugar content, because plain is really the way to go. If you get and you can add fruit into it yourself, but when you buy them and they're already pre-sweetened, I mean, there are yogurts that have as much sugar as a candy bar. So definitely look for that. Other fermented foods, things like fermented vegetables, such as sauerkraut, kimchi. There's tons of different brands. There's local brands. Firefly Kitchens, I love, is a local brand. When you're looking for sauerkraut or kimchi, you're going to want it to be in the refrigerated section. If it's really fermented, it's going to be in the refrigerated section. It's not going to be on the shelf. Often something that's sauerkraut on the shelf, warm, would be made with vinegar.
Down in Olympia, I love Oli kraut, and
Oh,
I think
holy
that
crap.
it's in a
Yes, they
glass
are
jar, which is nice
great.
too. And they do all of their
Yeah,
fermenting in glass containers, so so no plastic chemicals in there, which is super nice.
totally. Yes. Fireflies in Seattle, glass, and Oli. And then you can get them both in both places. They're both great.
Yeah, Oli kraut that's everywhere now, I think.
Totally. And then kombucha is another fermented drink. Almost, I think of it really as a tonic. Again, you have to watch out for the sugar in some kombuchas. And it's not like you're going to buy a giant thing of kombucha and drink it all in one shot. You're just having a couple of ounces. As well, to help rebalance, you can supplement. And again, you're going to want to choose researched brands and strains. What do you want it for, as Dr. Wood was just saying? And then, the dosage is important. You need to do a therapeutic dose first. Sometimes it's a numbers game at first. And then we have a number of ones that we use at the Tummy Temple for different things. Some of the classics, our Temple Biotic is a great high dose one that is really helpful if you've had to take antibiotics and it's killed off a bunch of good bacteria. It's nice to be able to take a higher dose. Flora Pro is a great one that we have that also has some a healthy yeast in it called Saccharomyces boulardii. And our naturopaths and myself can consult with you to help you choose a tailored probiotic that's going to work for what you have going on. Finally, you can also take some the butyric acid. You can actually take butyric acid. It's normally formed in the colon through the fermentation of the fiber by the good bacteria. And as Dr. was saying, it reduces inflammation and stimulates repair of the gut lining. So you can actually take that as a supplement. And as well, you can even take immunoglobulins that can help. They can help heal the lining of the gut. They bind microbes and toxins in the gut that reduce the immune system activation and the inflammatory response. So there are lots of different things that you can utilize in different ways that you can help rebalance all of the microbiome in the gut.
So I misspoke earlier. Now we're on the last R.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, now after rebalancing, then the next step is regenerate. So we want to regenerate the gut lining, really heal up those tight junctions, holding that sheet of cells lining our small intestine together. So, a couple things to consider would be just increasing variety of the diet. So one way I like to think about this is by aim to eat 30 different plant foods per week. And so that's not just fruits and vegetables. That also includes whole grains, that includes beans, it includes herbs and spices, it includes herbal teas. So, but it helps like nudge more variety into the diet. So, leaning away from the simple, like, leaning on things like corn, soy, dairy too much, and just increasing so that you get more different types of foods, which actually will result in more diversity in your microbiome, because different gut bacteria like to eat different things, like to eat different plant compounds. And so the more different plants that you eat, the more different strains of the innate bacteria in your gut will flourish. So things to lean into would be getting, more orange and red fruits and vegetables, to get carotenoids, which are a precursor to vitamin A, but also antioxidant and healing. So turmeric is especially potent and anti-inflammatory, gut healing. That can be juiced and added to foods or taken as a supplement. A really powerful healing food is pomegranate, actually. There are substances in pomegranate that feed one of our best butyrate producer bacteria. And so having a little bit of pomegranate every day, ideally like organic pomegranate fruit or pomegranate juice, can help to sort of rehab your population of those bacteria. Increasing leafy greens, green juices, nettles, nettle tea is a great option. Slippery and slimy foods will just sort of like apply sort of a Band-Aid type effect as they pass through the gut and just soothe and heal things up on the way through. So okra and aloe vera are good examples of that, like drinking aloe juice. Omega-3 fats, so wild-caught fish, walnuts, chia and flaxseed, or a fish oil supplement are very gut healing and anti-inflammatory. Then there are particular mucosal lining nutrients, which really target healing our endothelial cells, which are those cells lining the gut. L-glutamine is one of my favorites, and that can be found naturally in bone broth, in spinach, cabbage, and parsley, and it's available as a supplement as well. We have a combo supplement called IntestiHeal that contains L-glutamine, some anti-inflammatory herbs like slippery elm, marshmallow root. It has a little bit of licorice and ginger, and then NAG, which are wonderful. It's a great combination for gut healing. Collagen is helpful for gut healing, and that's also found naturally in bone broth or available as a supplement. We carry one called Collagen Pro. Oh, and then I saw a note a little bit earlier that Elizabeth was sharing that Marlene's Market carries both of those brands of sauerkraut. So that is wonderful. Optimizing your vitamin D is very important for gut healing. That can be a really useful thing to test because we all absorb and utilize vitamin D a bit differently. And so, what's an appropriate dose of a vitamin D supplement for one person may not be the correct dose for another person. And then I guess we kind of touched on this. Oh yeah. So things like the orange vegetables, we just kind of touched on turmeric, but pumpkin, sweet potato, cantaloupe, etc. And then Heidi will go into a bit more detail about some soothing and healing herbs for us.
Yeah, so there's lots of herbs that are often considered mucilaginous, which means when you get them wet, they kind of get slippery and mucousy, and they'll coat the lining of the GI tract and help heal it. I often think about it as if you had a sore on your arm, you want to stop scratching it. So that's like removing the irritating things, but it's nice to put some soothing goo on there and put a Band-Aid on there. So that some of these soothing healing herbs can act that way. So things like marshmallow root, slippery elm, licorice, These are all soothing mucilaginous herbs. And we have a great blend called Intesti Heal that mixes these herbs plus the L-glutamine that Dr. Wood was just mentioning. That's the food for the lining of the gut, the food for the endothelial cells that line your gut. So you mix the L-glutamine with these soothing herbs, and it's a great combination for gut healing. We use it with a lot of our clients. We have other supplements as well that help with gut inflammation or general inflammation. We have one called InflamaPro that is really great if people have a lot of food reactivity or food sensitivities, because sometimes it's hard to get in a good protein source. You're trying to heal your gut. You're not sure exactly what to eat because you're cutting out a lot of things. And InflamaPro has a lot of anti-inflammatory components along with a nice protein powder that's very helpful. There's also something called fulvic acid. We use one called Ion Gut Health. Fulvic acid can help bind gut toxins like heavy metals and pesticides. It can help tighten the gap junctions. That's the junctions in the gut that get leaky or separated and loose, that get hyperpermeable. And the fulvic acid in Ion Gut Health can also help support the communication between the gut and the immune system. So super helpful when you're healing your gut. And all of these sort of different gut healing supportive supplements, they can be taken when you're actually like, I am actively doing a gut healing protocol. They can also be taken preventatively. No, if you know, oh, I'm going to go out to eat and I'm going to have something that, doesn't really, that's more inflammatory or that has a bunch of glyphosate sprayed on it because it's not organic. You can take some things preventatively, or if you that you react to something and you're like, I'm choosing to go eat this thing. Or if you go on vacation and you eat things you normally wouldn't, or you get food poisoning, you can take these things in an acute situation as a preventative situation, or when you're doing an active healing protocol. So they're pretty flexible in that way. As well, what you can do to help with this whole regeneration of the gut lining is back to the de-stressing, like we were talking about. Daily moving. It doesn't have to be full on exercise where you're just like, pouring out sweat. Just getting some movement in there can be really helpful. Slowing down when you're eating, like we talked about before, having it be a calm environment. Sleep cannot be underrated. I can never stress enough how important getting good quality sleep is. And then there's things like meditation, breathing exercises, yoga, whatever works for you to de-stress is going to be helpful to work into your life on a regular basis.
Absolutely. So I wanted, we are going a little bit over. Hopefully you can bear with us for another couple minutes. And I know there were a few questions in here that we didn't get to that are a bit more complex, talking about fecal transplants and histamine intolerance. And I'm very sorry. We're probably just not going to be able to get to those things today, but those are things that we, work with in our practice. So if you're wanting some in-depth care in that area, we absolutely do work with histamine intolerance and, can answer all sorts of questions about fecal transplants. So just couldn't get to everything today. So timeline of healing, and you have had fantastic questions. So thank you so much for all of your questions. The gut is constantly healing itself. It's constantly regenerating. It is our body system that is most quick to heal, actually. So it's gonna be, given the opportunity, removing irritants, removing allergens, it's going to start trying to heal itself immediately. Within 3 days, you can see some improvement. But that said, it's a process because it's hard to remove all of the potential irritants. It takes time to figure things out. There's some trial and error. And, while it will start healing itself immediately, it's not going to finish healing itself immediately. So we kind of look at it as give it like 2 seasons to really work at this and really give your gut some love. give it some concerted attention. It can take longer depending on the complexity of the situation, but that's kind of a ballpark estimate. And, you know, if someone is still really reacting and not getting a lot of success with the things we've talked about today, that's really a time for testing. You know, looking at doing a test for food sensitivities or a stool test, looking at the microbiome in more detail, or a breath test. And that's where, you know, during a visit, we go through what's the priority right now, which one are we going to start with. It is possible to do them all at once, but that can be quite expensive. But, you know, there may be persistent gut infections, and that needs really specific targeted treatment. So that, you know, that is definitely time to do testing and then focus on specific treatment, and then get back to these things that we've been talking about today. So I think we've reached the end of our class today. Thank you so much for being here. We will send out that follow-up email, and then we also want to offer a discount code. So let's see, I think Heidi is going to share.
Healing 2024, and it's for 20% off any of the products in our gut healing supplement collection, which we will send out. And you can also mention this class and get $20 off a session that if you book it in the next week, whether it be to see Dr. Wood or come in for nutrition or any session, just as long as it's booked in the next week, if you just mention this class, then you get $20 off.
You don't need to actually be seen in the next week. You just have to call to make the appointment in the next week, just so you know, because I think we have somewhat limited appointment times like this week. It usually takes us 2 or 3 days to get the follow-up email sent out, but we'll try and do that as soon as possible. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you again, Elizabeth and Marlene's, for hosting us and for being just a wonderful source of healthy food. And have a lovely evening.
Thanks, everyone.